welcome to the Parenting Show. I'm Jennifer Anderson. With me is my co-host and family counselor, Alyson Schafer. I don't even know what show we're on. What are we doing?
We're on our show.
Yes.
Welcome back.
Yes.
I haven't seen you in 12 years. How are you?
That's right.
Catch me up.
Yes, a show that started 12 years ago. We took a little bit of a hiatus.
Had to raise a few kids, you know.
Yes, and we've been going through all of these amazing episodes for parents that we used to help 12 years ago and parents that are new and discovering that they maybe need a little bit of help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so wonderful to be back. It's always wonderful to have an opportunity to talk about Adlerian democratic parenting because it is a philosophy for raising kids that when people hear it say, well, that makes all kinds of common sense, but it's not the kind of thing I would have come up with on my own. Mm-hmm. So we're rich with advice and practical information in kind of the how-to area. So if you haven't watched episodes, welcome and check out the other ones.
And this is nothing new. You are third generation
True
Adlerian, right?
Which means I've been in an Adlerian timeout. I was that little kid. I was literally raised in this philosophy. And one of the big names, Rudolf Dreikurs, who wrote Children the Challenge, he was a friend of my grandmother's. That book is still considered by the Library of Congress to be one of the most seminal writings on child guidance in this century. So, really? Yeah. And I remember him. Big guy, Viennese, strange accent, big bow tie. Mm-hmm. He counseled our family in Toronto to train other family counselors when I was like 4 years old.
So what we are discussing here, it's not new. It's not new. The new way of parenting. Yeah, this is tried and true.
Yeah, this is not newfangled, and it's certainly, again, based on different language, whether you want to say democratic or backbone, some of the other names for this style of parenting. The research shows that the best outcomes for kids later in life come from this style of parenting. And again, I find parents are mostly motivated to want to have a new parenting tradition that they didn't like how autocratic their parents were. But the problem is when we eliminate using punishment and rewards, we leave a vacuum. And in the absence of good parenting leadership and techniques, what we find is that kids end up rising up and they become the dictators of the household. And so our natural tendency is to say, well, that's not okay, and then we go back to being autocratic again. And I don't want to see these two polar extremes. I want to show a third option to parents that there is ways to be an effective discipliner without having your kids walk on you and without you having to trample on your kids.
Right. All right, we're talking about parenting styles today, and personality styles. Mm-hmm. And so that is kind of a broad term. You mentioned before we began the show, emotional regulation, which you said is a buzzword. I've never heard that term, but it is exactly as it sounds.
Yeah, today I really wanted to cover the idea that there's all these different kinds of kids. You know, there are anxious kids, and there are angry kids, and there are shy kids, and we all are part of human nature, and we all kind of come out a different way, and we're born with some temperament, and part of it we develop as a coping mechanism, a unique way to go through life. We call that lifestyle. And so yes, our kids are different, and at what point do our differences become problematic or pathological or diagnosable, you know? And so with emotional regulation, it's the word refers to a child's ability to calm and soothe themselves so that they can function. When you get dysregulated, you get a child who might appear anxious, might appear angry, acting out in some way or retreating in some way. That shows that they are dysregulated. And this is more and more, this will be the language that parents or teachers will come to me about. He dysregulates. How do I get him to regulate his emotions? Emotionality. We don't like how emotional he is.
Right. Okay, so that's good. And we've been asking folks to send in emails. Mm-hmm. So you've received a lot of emails about the different shows that we're doing. The first is, my son is super sensitive, and when things don't go his way, he explodes. His meltdowns can go on for half an hour over something as small as his Lego blocks not fitting together. How can I help him to be more reasonable and roll with things better?
Mm-hmm. Does he say how old they are?
Doesn't say.
No. Well, he's playing with Lego blocks, so it's, Don't get me wrong, Lego's an all ages game, but so I'm thinking he's part of a smaller kid. And I say that because, well, I don't want to say, oh, it's developmental, he'll grow out of it. You still have to parent around it.
Okay, so maybe we can break this down, because there are this idea of being sensitive, or when things don't go your way. I mean, you can be 2, you can be 102, and you explode when things don't go your way. So let's start with the toddler, with the toys being taken at that age group, and we'll kind of work our way up.
So to your point, the younger you are, the more you are still trying on different solutions and coping mechanisms to life, and you're shaping your belief system based on your experiences. So if you're a little kid and you always get your way, that will become a problem, because you're going to believe you should always get your way, and you will be angry when you don't get your way. So I think it's important for kids at a young age in a family to not always get their way. You know, as a matter of fact, mommy and daddy are talking right now and you're interrupting. It's not your turn. That's a great, simple way to teach kids that they don't always get their way, their desire to speak right now. You have to wait and be patient. So part of that is what we call, it's developing the child's frustration capacity, the frustration tolerance. And when you're little, you don't have much frustration tolerance, and we want to grow. We want to be on the growing edge of that. So the French from this book, Bringing Up Bébé, have an expression that every day we must frustrate the child. And it doesn't mean to like pinch them. It means to live the reality of life, you know, that I'm sorry, that's not an option. We don't have chicken fingers. We're having salmon. No, we're not going to the park. Your baby brother has a cold. We need to stay home today. And it's okay for them to be disappointed, but learning how to calm oneself is part of what we're going to learn and increase our ability to roll with the frustrations of life. The reality of life is that it's frustrating living with others, and exercise that more and more as our child builds up a capacity for it. In the case of this child, I would say it's what's ineffective is to say, just calm down. Because by definition, by the time you're dysregulated, something has happened that has set off your fear, freeze, flee response in the body. And you're having this flood of chemistry, literally, but honestly, your whole body changes its chemistry. Your muscles tighten, digestion stops. You know, so many things. Your eyes get better at focusing. You know, so you're really having a full-on event. And that kind of hijacked feeling, the hijacking of what we call the amygdala, really can be quite scary for kids. They really feel out of control. And so as a parent, what I would say is, rather than just demolishing them for this and expecting that with enough assertiveness that you should just be able to get them to pull it together, you know, instead we have to think about it as they will develop self-regulation skills with time and practice, but for the moment, we need to co-regulate them. And I think that what most parents would relate to is we naturally do this with babies. If you have a crying baby or colicky baby, we don't say, get over yourself. We don't say, you know, I'm going to put you over here in the playpen where you're not bothering anyone, and I'll be back when you stop crying. We try to soothe them. You know, we go over, we pick them up. And so, you know, did you ever do the Happiest Baby on the Block, the Harvey Kart book?
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Where you do the 5 S's, you know, where you shh, shh, shh. And what you're replicating all these features of what the environment was like for the infant when they were in the womb, and you're just sort of doing it on the outside. So when you've got a dysregulated toddler and they're yelling at you, I hate you, and you're not coming to my birthday party, and they're chucking their Lego at you, I know it's easy to want to see it as being a bad kid, but I want you to see it more as like it's just like a colicky kid. And I know it's hard to kind of hug a porcupine, but really we're being called to not isolate and move away, which is our tendency, but to kind of move in, get close, and to do some regulating, which might be for a 5-year-old, just a little, you know, rub at the back, and it's okay, I see you're upset, and I find that one of the other big techniques is to not try to rationalize with them. That's very left brain logical. You want to go right brain emotional. So active listening is the big deal, right? So you thought you were going to build a tower and you couldn't get your pieces together, and oh, you're so frustrated. Because then the child says, yeah, that's me. That's me. That's what's happening. And when you feel understood, you tend to be calmer. So I don't think you give a huge amount of attention. I've seen this in the classrooms where you got a kid crying and then you get busy with somebody else or whatever, they'll stop and then you look over at them again and they say, oh, she's looking up. It's like, wow, that was pretty turn on, turn off. So sometimes you need to move away from their storm. I don't disagree with that advice either, but you got to find the sweet spot between this person is now almost in a panicked state.
Right. It's beyond the issue.
Yeah.
Because now it's just the panic, right?
Yeah, and they really can't get rational and get back on track until that emotional event happens. And it's maybe got a 2-minute event curve if you don't keep it fueled.
Right. Let's go to kind of the opposite. Yeah. The next question is, my daughter is very shy. She hides behind my leg when we meet people in public. She won't speak to them or even say hi. Her teacher says she has yet to raise her hand in class. I'm very outgoing, and it makes me sad that she is so happy and bubbly at home, but won't show herself to the world. How can I help her?
Mm-hmm.
And she's 9.
And she's 9. Okay, so she's got to build her courage. I think a lot of not putting up your hand serves the function of, if you don't know what my answer is, then I can't be wrong publicly. So if there's like a fear of making mistakes, a fear of failure, a desire for perfection, then you're not going to out yourself unless you're 100% confident that you've got the right answer. Mm-hmm. And so that desire for perfectionism, that fear of mistakes, kind of tells me that part of the child's belief system is, I'm only as good as how I'm performing. Mm-hmm. So if I have the wrong answer, it's not bad enough that I made a mistake. It somehow lowers my ego worth, lowers my value, diminishes my worth, and that, which is not true at all. Mm-hmm. But it's a classic cognitive mistake, or a mistaken belief, a private logic we call it, that a child would have. And so if they feel like, in order to be safe and secure, I must do everything perfectly, therefore I'm not going to try anything unless I know I'm perfect, it would be easy to just lay to the back, avoid, put someone else as the front. You ask the question. So I would start with changing their attitude about things being perfect, working on that idea that mistakes are actually how we learn, not failures. Mm-hmm. There's Carol Dweck is a great one who talks about mindset, and she teaches students this concept, and they immediately change their thinking about making mistakes. So you can go to her, she's got a TED Talk or YouTube video or whatever for that people can, and again on my website I'll have her up there. But it's a simple exercise to help kids understand this faulty thinking, and then just encouraging her to do whatever the next little baby step is.
Right. Part of that question is that she hides behind my leg when we meet people in public. Mm-hmm. And that can certainly be applied, when you get even a toddler or preschooler, and that whole idea of being shy, and that sometimes extends into, family gatherings where it's like, come here, give your aunt a hug, come over here. And if a child...
And I don't think you should force a child to hug anyone they don't want to hug. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting. This child may have a temperament where they are more shy, and we're all born with temperament. But again, it's not what you have, it's how you use it. If she's hiding behind her mother's leg, and her mother is outgoing, she said, I'm outgoing, so it pains me. First of all, there's nothing wrong with being shy or introverted, mm-hmm. right? That's not a flaw. Just because you have a different way of being in the world as extroverted. But you can imagine how a kid might learn to use their shyness to their advantage. And what I mean by that is, chances are, if extroversion was important to mom, sociability was an important value to the mom, when they met the neighbor, they probably said when she was a toddler, say hi to Mr. Walter. And the kid, and then the mom's like, oh, she's being rude. I want her to be social. Go ahead, to your point. And then the pushing, the overdoing. And then the kid says, this is really important to mom. And instead of complying to what mom says, if I really want to have some power over mom, I can get the world to spin around my finger if I resist doing what I'm told and I actually act like I don't want to. And now suddenly Mr. Walter's talking to me. My mom's saying, go talk to him. And suddenly she's hijacked the entire conversation with the neighbor. How powerful is that? Mm-hmm. So, there could be a secondary gain. Not to say that she's not shy and, and it's a new situation, which is for little kids can be a problem. But, there may be some value that we don't want to give it. So again, my parenting advice would be, just diminish the response. And if you're embarrassed, you could just say, oh, we're working on our hellos. Or I guess she doesn't feel like saying hi now, and then just move along. But don't be pulling them out and putting them on display and forcing them.
Right. And I knew your thoughts about hugging, and so that's why I wanted to bring it up, because I think for a lot of people, they feel, especially with family and older generations, that is the respectful thing to do, because you hug, you kiss, and that's not always comfortable.
And that part about the not being comfortable for the parent, though, is that there's where we're standing in fear of people judging us. Like, why isn't she making her kid hug me? You know, or you're not parenting right if your kid doesn't do that. And so I think we have to dig deep within ourselves to find our courage and to parent according to our beliefs and values, even when we know that important people in our lives disagree. And I think we can respectfully say, hey, I just read this really interesting article that said forcing hugs, it can be problematic for X, Y, and Z, so I'm trying this right now. You know, hope you support me.
Yeah. It's having those lines in your back pocket that makes situations much better.
Which is why can I plug myself?
Yes, you can.
No, because when I wrote Ain't Misbehaving, like, you don't have to read the whole book. Like, you just go to the problem that you look up your problem in the index. But it literally has scripts in it.
Oh.
So that when your amygdala is hijacked and you're in the middle of the fight, freeze, flee reaction and you can't pull it together, you can at least open the book and word for word say to your kid some of the scripts that are in here, if that will help you.
And that was the third one you wrote.
That was,
yes. So the first two, both are great read, but then the third one, it was nice to have those quick solutions. Quick solutions.
Well, you know, and it's nice if you're giving them to, say, grandma or a nanny, somebody who's maybe not as invested in knowing the whole theory as maybe mom and dad are. But it's also just those in the moment answers. You don't have time to read 368 pages when your kid's chucking their sippy cup from the back of the car.
Yeah. You just almost want the tape recorder of Alyson Schafer, where you can just, here's the answer that I'm going to give you.
I'm sure there's going to be like those little things in your ear.
Yeah.
I'll just be watching you and guiding you in an earpiece.
Yes. All right. Next question. My daughter is very strong-willed and domineering. She can't.
Welcome to 2018. I think that's.
She can't seem to keep friends because she is so bossy, and they get tired of playing with her.
Yeah. So again, nothing wrong with having assertive skills in life and feeling confident, but do we use them in a way that is pro-social or not? And to always be the bossy one is the difference between being a boss and being bossy.
Yes.
So to be a boss is to be a leader. To be bossy is to be in a one-up, one-down relationship where you're controlling another person and you're got unclear boundaries about responsibilities and things. And so that's something that we have to socialize around, meaning I want to keep this strong assertive piece, but I just want to bend it towards pro-social usage. So I would give her lots of jobs that involve leadership. That's great. But when she's playing with friends and it's co-play, I would make sure I would supervise play dates, and I would actually say, you know what, actually, it's your friend's turn to pick which color player piece she's going to be. Actually, you know what? No, it's your friend's turn to play the vet. It's your turn to play the dog or whatever. Why am I always the dog when I come to play? So we need to monitor it and actually step in and explain why. And the same thing, I mean, I think kids can make some sense of some of these things, because if we get them to see it from the other side and say, well, how would it be if you never got to pick your player piece? How would it be if you never got to pick the role you were in make-believe? That would make it pretty unfun to play, wouldn't it? Yeah, so we have to kind of share that fun. Sometimes we pick and sometimes other people pick.
Love it. Next,
Yeah.
we're going through
Clocking
these.
through.
Yes, my son won't try anything new. He likes everything the same. He even wears the same pair of sweatpants every day. I know he would like soccer if he would just try it. How do I get to him to expand his interest and be more daring?
Mm-hmm. My guess is that this is a firstborn or an only child.
You're playing
Playing the party games.
Yes.
What does Kreskin say? I'm guessing. And my reason for that is that those qualities are very common in a first and only child. And part of that is, again, if you have no siblings and you're the only person living in generally an adult world because of mom and dad, it's very easy to get have very high standards, to, again, be kind of perfectionistic, hold those standards for yourself. And also firstborns want to do right, do good, and be first. But the problem is they don't think if they're not first and perfect that they're second. They think if I'm not first and perfect, I'm worthless. So the stakes are very high for them around what they're willing to do. And so, they may be less willing to stick their neck out. And it's going to reduce the scope of their experience. And their point is we want to be on that widening. So the question becomes, what is the smallest thing that you could do to get them to experience a new experience that you think that that would push their comfort zone but not be over the top? And so you might negotiate with them in terms of, well, why don't you try one day, and if you don't like it, you can drop out. Or why don't we just go to the squash or the soccer tryout, and we'll sit on the sidelines and we'll watch and we'll see whether or not it looks like it would be interesting to try. I want to just do whatever the next little piece would be. And certainly in terms of like sweatpants, well, God love you, wouldn't it?
If we could wear sweatpants, we'd be in them now.
Oh, I'll tell you. So there's also what we call personality priorities, and one is comfort, another one is control, another one is superiority, another one is pleasing. And a lot of people understand, oh yeah, I'm always worried about getting affirmations from others. I think a lot of people understand the pleasing type, and a lot of people say I'm a control freak. Those are, what was that? And then superiority or mastery. I like the word mastery better than superior, But it sounds like, as I hear this kid, it could well be that this kid's just a comfort kid. Yeah. Wants things the same, good enough for me, just let me have my dinner on the TV tray in front of the cartoons and be in my sweatpants and I'm happy. It could just be a comfort kind of kid. So don't feel like it's a wrongdoing. Just work on those growing edges, and not every kid's going to take up 27 sports and do a lot of new novel things.
I'm smiling because we had the mall experience this week where the words came out of my mouth. You can't wear leggings or just ripped jeans every day of your life. Sometimes we need a dressier pair of pants. And she said, Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to find a job where I can wear sweatpants every single day.
And she may well.
Yeah.
She may well.
Yeah.
It's amazing how, people get creative.
But can we then to some of these kids be able to say, well, that's not the rules, unfortunately. When you go to your school, you have to wear your uniform, or when you go out to a fancy restaurant, you can't wear your jogging pants. Like that becomes some of the logical.
Right. So to your point, I think we do need to socialize kids that there is a time for wearing bathing suits, and it's not to Sunday school.
Right.
That's fair. But then there's the things where we end up making some artificial rules just simply because we would prefer it our way. So to the point of dressing, is there really a dress code at the restaurant? Are they going to stop your family at the door and say, I'm sorry, you need jackets required or no ripped pants? Will the restaurant stop you? Do they have a policy? A lot of times it's parents just saying, it would be nice if you made an effort to dress up. Most people dress up. But the truth is, the kids know that there's a wider range than their parents' range. Right. And so I think that's when we have to ask ourselves, first of all, I don't want to make up a whole bunch of rules that I don't need to make up. The less rules that you have, the better. They're going to pick up on the socializing by looking around. You can point it out to them. You can say, I'm unwilling to go. I'm embarrassed of how you look, so I'm unwilling to go. Now, that would be fair. But in the end, you have to ask whether or not the child's decision is impacting your quiet enjoyment. So if you are screaming in the living room or practicing trumpet at 4 a.m, what you're doing is impacting me. So that's different than, you're dressing your own body. If you're warm enough, if you're comfortable enough, if you're okay standing out that much, then that's really between you and I don't really have anything else more to say about it. So that's going more into the teenish years anyways. Right. Most 8-year-olds pretty much, okay, it's like I'll get dressed.
A black hole of years. Yeah. It's also, dealing with a family dynamic, it's also difficult when you have some of these personalities where you have an anxious child, where you have a bossy child. Sometimes if I can say this right, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So now you're dealing with a child who is very much like you or the opposite of you. And now it's a different struggle because now you're trying to understand the relationship and understand how to deal best with it.
Yeah. And to your point, there's often a lot of self-identification. You know, that one is just like me. It's often the one that's just like you that you tend to lock horns, especially if you're both people that like control, because then you don't share your power very well. And you might find that the reason why you were attracted to your spouse is because they were different from you and they're the complement, and therefore you might find that your partner is also the complement to that child. So we do end up with sort of like these little mini dyads in the family, which happens, but I wouldn't say you don't want to have a family that is literally two tribes. Like I'll parent him and you parent him, and you can see that in families. You know, you want to feel like a group. But you can use it to your betterment. Like there's nothing wrong when it comes to co-parenting that you don't have to do things the same. You may actually use your personality types against their personality types to make things more harmonious. So I know with my ex, he was very good at getting the kids to go to bed and stay in bed. If I tucked them in, they'd pop up and they'd be at the top of the stairs again. So I called him the closer. I go, you're the good closer. You should do tuck-ins. And he was very impatient when the kids would do homework. And I'm like, I got all kinds of patience. That stuff doesn't bother me at all. So it's like, okay, you do all the tuck-ins, I'll do all the homework. And so it doesn't have to be 50-50. You do 50% of the tuck-ins and do 50% of the homework. It's just divide the labor in a way that's going to make your housework the best.
Right. A few seconds left. You referenced the books before. Information about the books as well as a lot of different topics are available on your website.
Other books. Like, I've got a whole compendium on my resource
Never
page.
mind the other books.
Just buy mine, you'll be good. That's all you need. There's so much to learn when it comes to this topic and different individual problems. Any book that I've read that I thought would help my parents, I've tried to add up on my little library on my resource page.
Perfect.
Yeah.
There's also information on rogerstv.com that's all about our show here. We have done several episodes, so if you're interested in taking a look at those episodes, you can certainly go to rogerstv.com, or they're also available on the Rogers TV YouTube page. So you'll find all that information on the website where you can find them there as well. Thanks so much for watching. We hope it's been helpful, and have a great day.